I thank the Chairman. Mr. Cordray, nice to have you in front of us again. Mr. Meehan had talked about this, and I did. We printed out this get to know your borrower information. It's 1,100 pages. You said 1099, so we're not going to make a big deal about one page. But the people that I get a chance to talk to when I go back in the 3rd District of Pennsylvania are small banks. Now, while it may be easier for big banks to comply with this because they have huge numbers of people on board that can go through this stuff and sift through it, today's hearing was the credit crunch is the CFPB restricting consumer access to credit. Now, actually, 40 pages of this are actually the cost-benefit analysis. But the rest of it, these people have to know. And so for the small banks, we may say, listen, they're going to be okay, they're going to get through it, and I've got to the point where the too big to fail means you're too small to survive. And for anybody to suggest that there's any way that small banks and small lending institutions can go through this same process and come out at the other end, being able to offer the products they've offered before, is ludicrous. Now, where I come from, we rely on the small banks and the credit unions. And I'm looking at this, and I'm talking to guys who I grew up with, went to school with, our wives know each other, our kids know each other, and yet they have to sit down and get to know who their borrower is and what a qualified borrower is. And I'm just, does this make any sense to anybody? You talk about these are common sense solutions or reforms that are going to make it easier. It's not making it easier. It's making it more difficult. Access to credit can't be done over a long period of time. People need it now. If you need a transfusion of capital, you need it now. When you go to these small institutions and these small banks and they say, you know what, I'm not sure that I can do this for you anymore. They're opting out of offering products that they've always offered before. And the reason they're doing it is because they're not sure that they can survive what we're putting them through right now. I'm not blaming you for this. But I'm saying, well, while the patient's waiting for the people to do the diagnosis, they're dying. Access to capital is critical to small businesses. We're talking about an environment where we're trying to get job creators back online. You know what's keeping them away? Is uncertainty. They don't even know if they can borrow money anymore. Heck, I'm an automobile dealer. I don't know. My covenant changes every quarter. My collateral changes all the time. What used to be acceptable collateral is no longer acceptable collateral. The people I used to go for money right now say, you know what? Sorry, we can't help you because we're still trying to sift through the regulations. So while this may have been well-intended to start with, I mean, where you're sitting, please tell me, is it going to be easier for access to credit or harder? It's just easier or harder?
Okay, so first of all, I think there's some apples and oranges here.
No, it's not apples and oranges. It's access to credit. It's not apples. Is it easier or harder for small banks to lend money right now?
Okay. The reason it's been difficult for small banks to lend money for the last 4 years.
I'm just asking you easier or harder, Mr. Cordray. Okay. I don't need, I'm just asking you what the time is. I don't want you to build me a watch.
Okay. Since 2008, it's been harder for small banks to lend money.
It's much harder.
Since 2008.
So they are merchants. Banks are merchants. They have money on the shelf to lend to people. That's what they do. Mm-hmm. So when we make it harder for people like me, small businessmen, to have access to credit, if it's harder to get credit, it's harder to stay alive. And that's my whole point about this. Mm-hmm. In an environment where we want people to survive, we want people to go ahead and take that jump, go out and borrow the money. They can't go to the traditional lenders because the traditional lenders cannot sift through this.
That's not the cause, I don't believe, sir. Since 2008, it's been hard for smaller banks to lend. That's because we had a financial crisis and a crash of the system.
Mr. Cordray, I exist in that world, okay? Mm-hmm. I know how hard it is to survive in the real world. Only inside this beltway do we come up with solutions that are so difficult that nobody can pull the trigger anymore. So the purpose of this hearing was, are we restricting consumer access to credit? And the answer is yes, we are. We're making it so hard for the small banks and the credit unions to lend money. The rest of this is we're just tap dancing around the outside of this. It is so difficult for these people. They're going out of business.
Would you like me to respond or just listen? Which would you prefer?
Well, I would like you to listen, and I would like this administration to listen, because I'll tell you what, they've got a deaf ear when it comes to what's really going on in the private sector. I can appreciate where you came from. In my business, we have to survive every day. We go in hand-to-hand combat every day to survive. I do not need 1,100 pages from a guy that I've known all my life to tell me whether I'm qualified or not. That's the whole purpose of this. There's no answer to it.
Okay.
It's government red tape that's keeping this economy from recovering. I'm out of time. I'm out of time, but I'm not out of energy. I came here to fight for people who are out in the common world, the private world, and that's what we have to continue to do. Mr. Chairman, thanks for having this hearing.